Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start off our meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Clark. Dutra.
Here.
Orozco.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Quiroz Carter.
Here.
Salcido.
Here.
And Montesino.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. With that, can I ask you to do the Pledge of Allegiance, Ms. Vice Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now on to our consent agenda. All items appearing in the consent agenda are recommended actions which are considered to be routine and be acted upon as one motion. Any items removed will be considered immediately after the vote on the motion. The mayor will allow public input prior to the approval of the consent agenda. Any public input on the consent agenda?
This is the time for the members of the public, if they wish to speak, to go up to the podium. You have 2 minutes to speak on any item listed under consent agenda.
Good evening, afternoon. I'm Edita McQuarrie, and my husband and I live at 624 Atri Court. And Saturday night, New Year's Eve, we walked across the street to celebrate with our friend and neighbor. She's not well enough to go many places. And we left at 7 o'clock, and it was just drizzling. And at about 7:20, the next-door neighbor, Gail, came over and said, "Come out, look at the street." The street was totally flooded. We didn't have any firemen come out till about 9:15, 2 hours after we found out. And I want to know why it took 2 hours for the fire department to come and notify us that we were in danger. So that's my question.
Thank you for that. Anyone else in the public like to comment?
I think that keeping the drains clean and on a regular basis, especially when there's a storm coming, would be great.
Thank you.
Could you tell us your name and district, please? Thank you.
Elizabeth Williams and Argo Circle.
My name is Robin Spring. I live at 454 Suncrest. I've been there 12 years. Never had a flood. Thought I wouldn't, but we did. 7:15 at night, our garage started flooding, and it was coming from the fields. In our case, it wasn't coming from Bridge. It was coming from behind us. The 15-acre raspberry field looked like a lake. It eventually went down, and we never heard from anybody. That's what happened. My concern is, are we going to get a full accounting of why this occurred? I know it was an unexpected flood in some ways, an unexpected amount of rain, but everybody knows with that kind of rain and what the forests look like up in the mountains, the Carlitos River is going to carry debris, quantities of debris. And I know for a fact my gardener, who happens to live right over the big grates where that river has to go through and they're going to put it through the overflow canal, he said he came home to find that completely blocked with debris. The next morning at 7 o'clock, he got up and took debris out of there as well before anybody got there. He said if he'd been home, we wouldn't have flooded. We might have. I hear there's also a pump. And my husband and other neighbors yesterday were walking very near, in Pajaro Vista, walking very near the side of this big 15-acre raspberry field, which is fallow right now, which is a good thing because a lot of water was able to be taken in, but it wasn't in plastics. They saw a huge drain that was, only a piece of it could they see, was completely covered with debris, not maintained. The fence was full of debris. I'd like to know whose responsibility is to clean that. We've been told that the farmer leases, and he's the one who should clean it. Well, Mr. Jose Spindle is that person. We tried to reach him through the Ag Commission, and we're told he's in Mexico. I'd really like some accountability and some details of what failed and how many systems failed and why and what we can do so that doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jan Vieta. I live on Cedar Drive. And I know that there's been a lot of issues, and I know that these people really need to be heard. But all in all, I think the city did a great job. And Jimmy, I know that you were out bringing sandbags to people. Ari, you had a lot of stuff posted for people. And I think once the city saw the problem, they were out there taking care of it. There were cops all over. There were people cleaning the streets and keeping the drains clean. So not to dismiss anything that these people had to say. It's their complaints are valid, I'm sure. But I just think that the city needs a big thank you for pulling it together. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gustavo Castes. I am on Bridge Street. Simply, I would like to know if you can explain us what happened on New Year's Eve, which seems to have been exceptional, but we would like to understand what went wrong. I would also want to highlight that on New Year's Eve, I saw very little support from the city, almost just one water truck driving by, but no more than that. And that didn't happen yesterday. Yesterday, everything went okay. A lot of rain, we know, and that was expected. But what happened on New Year's Eve, that's something we would like to understand. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Kirby Harris, 625 Bridge Street, District 7. New Year's Eve was a real big problem, which you all know. What upsets most of us here is there was nothing. Once the water started coming, there were no cops, no fire people, until, well, I made a call to somebody at the Parks and Recs and said, you better get somebody down here and block off Bridge Street, because people were roaring down that street, throwing waves of water up into our homes and driveways. So the next day, you guys stepped up to the plate. But everybody knows there was a storm. It's winter. Regardless of not knowing it was going to sit over the city or for however long, preparation ahead of time should be an ongoing yearly thing. Before it starts, before the rain starts, take some time, clean out the culverts, test the pumps. That wasn't done. And I don't care what anybody says, it wasn't done. So I hope that from now on, that there's regular maintenance, timely, so that this doesn't happen again. On the other hand, I want to compliment all the workers at Parks and Rec, and Nick, and all the people at Public Works, people like Jimmy, and other people who stepped up to the plate and did a great job once it was taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to tell you a little story. There's a little Asian lady that lives on Argos Circle. She's 86 years old. Her husband died 2 weeks ago. New Year's Eve, her house was completely, totally inundated. She had no family to take care of her. Somehow, they got her to the Cesar Chavez shelter. She was the last one there with no one. And Nick took her over to one of the local hotels. She has no flood insurance. She has nowhere to go. And she's so disoriented. This is just one person. You know, myself and many other people were lucky, but there's a whole lot of people that weren't. And they need to be taken care of.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Clark Nagaoka. I'm a resident of District 6, and I am also a member of Regeneration, Pajaro Valley Climate Action. And I just wanted to point out, as though I'm sure it's obvious to everyone, that the intensity of these storms and the disasters, the floods that have resulted are a consequence of climate change. And just want to emphasize how important it is that the city follow through on the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan of 2030. Also, I would like to point out that of course, we see as it's clear from the comments we've heard already that climate change is going to affect different people differently. And if you're in a low-lying area, if you're poor or homeless or elderly, it's going to affect you much more. So please, we'd like to hear more about the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. And when will the public hear about it? We read that it was signed on January 3rd, I think, by the city manager, but it hasn't been brought to the public yet. So please keep up on that. That we're going to have more and more of these disasters as the climate heats, and so we need to be ready. It's not just a matter of cleaning out culverts. There's a huge amount of infrastructure that needs to be reinforced or changed. And hopefully the new federal infrastructure money will help with that. But we would really like to hear how the city is preparing and whether the 2030 plan is being followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public?
City Council members, my name is Maria and I live in District 6, part of the evacuation zone. And I also work for Regeneración, and these past few days have really been a nightmare. But this is the actual reality, and we're not waiting for the climate crisis anymore. It's here, and it's not gonna be the last time that our community is gonna have to face this type of situations. So I really hope our local government and everyone in that community takes this seriously, and we really also take into account the climate adaptation plan. And yeah, as you know, climate change is just making everything worse. It's not only gonna be about floods, it's also about heat waves. And I really, really hope that the damages for our farm working community too, I hope that the crops aren't destroyed, and that our families here in Watsonville can continue living their lives. And I hope to see more support for those already more disproportionately impacted, those without homes, lower income, and the elderly as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Judy Lazenby. I'm from Pajaro Village.
Christine Kelsey, president of the current board at Pajaro Village.
And I got a call today from Elizabeth Padilla from the city manager. And they were asking what we could do in the way of providing a place for people to come and find out resources that are available. So we are in the process right now of printing up a flyer with all the resources available, all the insurance things, anything that we could put on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And it will be distributed in the Pajaro Village and some areas of Bay Village, which we have designated, that from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock, volunteers from the community bridges, and I believe a Catholic church will be going door to door and passing out these flyers And then at 4 o'clock, we will have the Director of Community Services, Ray Cancino, come and speak to as many people as want to come to 739 Bronte. We're going to try to make provisions for that. On I think you'll have a number of insurance agencies. You might guess we're just putting this program together, but it will be on as soon as we finalized it, it will be on the Register Pajaronian website.
I did want to bring up one thing about insurance. Insurance with National Flood Insurance is running about $2,000 a year. And a lot of us in the village have insurance that's costing us between $600 and $800 a year. If you have a mortgage, you have to have flood insurance, which is a good thing. However, I have this $800 a year insurance. So the damage to my house is probably between $20,000 and $50,000. I'm thinking to myself, okay, do I foot this bill myself with an equity line of credit, or do I go in for a claim? So I asked my insurance agent, Dwight Lynn on East Lake, who's Farmers. He took him 6 days to get an answer. And for my private insurance, which is Lloyd's of London, they said, Christine, if you file a claim, you don't get any more flood insurance from us ever. You have to go back to the National Flood Insurance for at least 5 years before you can go out and get some other private insurance. So I myself am footing my own bill in case South Zapuetas Creek falls down and my house gets washed away. It's going to cost more than $50,000, and I'm going to save it for that in case it happens, which we hope it doesn't. That's all I want to tell you.
Thank you very much.
And come on Thursday evening between 4 and 5, and the insurance agents will be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for all your help. Anybody else coming to the podium? Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I think you,
Elizabeth Williams, practice makes perfect. Maybe I'll get better at speaking. But I just want to say that when we get the evacuation order, you know, you load your car up and then you're like, now where do I go? And you go to the shelter and you drive through a giant flood to get to the fairgrounds. And it's a miracle I ever made it to the shelter. So also, one of the shelters was very nice. The one at Cesar Chavez, everything was real nice and high, really high hill, and the people were very, very nice. But fairgrounds was kind of not that nice. But I want to just also thank everybody for the help. And we also, the phones don't work. That, you know, when you're trying to get information, there's not really good connections. And it's very confusing about all the different messages you get and where to go to get the message, and if this is the newest message, and so it was very confusing. Okay.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, staff.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Tamara Vides. I'm Watsonville Assistant City Manager, but I'm going to be presenting in a moment, perhaps to all of you, but I want to take this opportunity on the oral communication to elaborate and thank Judy for your partnership in allowing the space for the meeting to occur, because we do acknowledge that is a very big need. If you can please display. So I want to share with the council and those that are watching the council meeting that indeed we are collaborating, the City of Watsonville, Community Bridges, Community Action Board, Santa Cruz Community Foundations, and many other local partners are collaborating in just really working on recovery efforts from the flood. And oh, you have it in Spanish, and I was really struggling to read in English, but now I see why. We have this flyer, it's bilingual, and we are inviting neighbors in the flooded areas to join, like Judy said, in this meeting, and it will be on Zoom as well as in person in the Pajaro Village Community Room. Simultaneously, it will be run at the Mountain Community Center in Felton for those affected in other areas of the county, because this is not just in Watsonville, it's a countywide recovery effort. So we are we connected, thanks to the support of the Community Foundation, with United Policyholders. We do acknowledge that those who have insurance may need some assistance in navigating how to file that insurance claim and what are the implications of filing the claims, as you well stated. So we're hoping to be able to provide resources, and in the course of tomorrow, we'll be training all our volunteers, and between 9 and 3, as it was shared, we will be having a tent right at the Blackburn and Bridge Street parking lot. This is on Thursday. We're gonna have volunteers there, just with information, with resources, cleanup resources, filing claims, any information, contractors that are working, giving us discounted prices to be able to assist neighbors with the recovery process. In addition, we have been able to obtain funding to help with solid waste costs, and just being able to help neighbors that have been impacted by the flood. So this is the flyer that will be distributed, and I want to assure you that all the materials and resources have already been prepared. Happy to share them with you. If I get your email, I'd be more than happy to share with you everything that has been prepared, including an assessment that we will be conducting door to door, making sure that we understand, are there any things that we're not thinking of right now that we can make available for neighbors that have been impacted. So that is what is in place, 9 to 3 on Thursday, door to door outreach, as well as the meeting happening at 4 p.m. So we're looking forward to connecting with those that need assistance. So thank you, and thank you for your partnership again.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to close public comment, and one of the things, because staff is going to make a small presentation for 3B, so I'm going to remove 3B to make it 4A. So if I can get someone to move the consent item 3A.
I'll second.
With that, it's been moved by Councilmember Parker and seconded by Councilmember Dutra. Yes. With that, any questions? None. Can I get a roll call?
Sure. Clark?
Aye.
Dutra?
Aye.
Orozco?
Aye.
Parker?
Yes.
Quiroz Carter?
Aye.
Salcido?
Aye.
And Montesino.
Yes.
The motion carries.
With that, we're going to move on to items removed from the consent agenda, which is going to be 4A, ratifying the city manager's proclamation of the existence of a local emergency.
Mr. Mayor, council members, before you is the declaration of emergency that was done out of my office on January 3rd, which established the emergency period for the city. Under our state statute, it needs to be ratified by your council within 7 days, and it stays into effect till this council declares the emergency over. So there is like the 4th and the 5th. That was just a descriptive, because we had more impacts since the declaration of the emergency. So that's what's before you. I think in preparing for this and some of the questions, I can assure that there'll be a much more fuller report when we look at everything. We're still in the midst of evaluating everything. But our assistant city manager, as well as we were very fortunate to have a city flood. We have one of the preeminent experts in the region with us, which is an incredible luxury. We'll be making a short presentation. I do want to, before asking them to speak, I do want to recognize the community's help. Everybody stepped up. I get it was very it was scary. It was frustrating. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of things going on at once. Our staff stepped up. Tamara, who was the EOC director initially, then our fire chief also took that over. Our flood control expert and our water expert, our own Jackie. We have, I mean, I can just go down the line. Our police chief, our planning department, our parks, who did the Karen shelter, our finance. It just kind of go rave on. Our airport manager who was staffing the EOC at the county, so we had a direct liaison at the county level. We went through several operational periods. We're still in the emergency. We stood up the EOC, and now we're in a virtual, still EOC environment. So I just want to thank staff, and there's numerous other people, other staff and team members that really stepped up. So I think today it's our goal to just share a little bit of information, kind of where we're at right now. But please rest assured that we'll bring a lot more fuller presentation, discussion, and assessment in the near future. But we just have to get through kind of where we're at today. We need to kick into the recovery phase and get people the information, the resources. I know that one of our council members had direct connection with our Congress representative, Ms. Loughran, and she's already reached out our state representatives through your council members. So we're going to be out there trying to get as much resources as we can. So if I can ask our assistant city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Mendez, and Mayor and Council. Again, Tamara Vides, Assistant City Manager. And I will take us through a short presentation, but not without the assistance of Jackie McLeod, who is our Environmental Sustainability Manager for the City of Watsonville, particularly leading all our efforts on flood control here in the City of Watsonville. So I do count with her expertise and assistance for today's informational presentation. And we are doing this, asking the council to ratify the emergency declaration that City Manager Mendez did on January 3rd, given the devastating series of events that have impacted our community in just this short 10 days of the year 2023. We started the year with, just these very, very devastating events. So I wanna walk us through the last 10 days and just kind of give you an understanding of all the actions and kind of highlight some of the things to really confirm that our city is under a state of emergency, and many of our neighbors have been impacted. So we are looking at December 31st, as a way of background, an atmospheric river hit the central coast, not just Watsonville, but the entire region. So a lot of rain was received and that evening, and during the course of that rain event, the Corralitos Creek breached the levee outside of the city limits approximately at 5 p.m. After these occur, quickly, very, very, very quickly, as it was mentioned, several city streets were flooded and residents were flooded. At that time, while the water was running high, the best scenario at that moment was to shelter in place, and that's what occurred the evening of December 31st. We that evening quickly engaged in response. Our Watsonville Fire Department quickly began to assist residents that needed rescues or evacuation calls that were coming in. Our police officers were assisting with closing the roads and ensuring the safety of neighbors. Our Watsonville Public Works crew worked through the evening, through the night that day, assisting with road closures and ensuring that all 14 store pump stations were operational. And I want to assure members of the public and the council the pumps were operational. There was the pumps are designed for a regular rain event, and definitely the amount of water that we were receiving that evening far exceeded what those pumps are intended to do on a regular basis. Our parks crew that evening opened a triage area for shelter at Ramsey Park, and that remained available until a few minutes before the midnight in the new year. And our communication team that same evening began pushing out information for our community members that have access to our social media platforms, and I'll speak more about that. Quickly, the next morning on January 1st, the water has receded overnight, but as mentioned, leaving a large amount of debris and sediment on all city streets that were impacted with this flood event. Our solid waste team, our street sweepers, our field services crew, our water services crew, and parks personnel were all recalled on Sunday, January 1st to assist with the aftermath of the storm and really clean the streets on that Sunday as much as possible. And a lot of great work was done on that day. The next day, our solid waste crew placed 40-yard garbage container on the Blackburn and Bridge Street lot, and we filled that container about 4 times on a day, just really helping neighbors be able to dispose of those items that were damaged with the flood waters. So a lot of work got done in a very short amount of time, and at that moment, knowing the National Weather Services was reporting that a new storm was going to come and hit our area, like preparation, recovery, quick recovery and preparedness was the top priority of our team, ensuring that our drainage system was ready for heavy rain again. We engaged contractors. There was granite rock. Let me make sure I don't miss anyone. Give me 1 second. Top tier trading, grading, Don Chapin came to help us clear some of our channels and remove sediments and buildup that have happened with the water running. But we also engaged Granite Rock and Granite Construction that very generously opened their quarries to be able to access sand, to be able to provide access to sandbags for residents. As you know, not only on a weekend, but on New Year's Day, supply chain was not the easiest thing to manage, and our crews did a fantastic job trying to procure and secure as much as possible. On that day, we also performed, again, a comprehensive preventive maintenance and more than maintenance check that all the pumps and generators were ready to run again given the upcoming second round of rain event. Quickly, as I want to highlight neighbors helping neighbors, January 1st and 2nd, we saw a tremendous mobilization of our community coming to help. Several community organizations that we typically collaborate with and responded with 70 volunteers who help conducting door-to-door outreach and for those neighbors that have been impacted, and really trying to provide information about the second event that we were expecting after the first flooding event had already occurred. That weekend, over 1,200 tons of sand and 75,000 sandbags were filled and distributed to members of our community, just wanting to ensure preparedness. Preparing for Wednesday. So this was occurring, preparing for Wednesday. We were expecting what it was called as a bomb cyclone, and this was predicted to be a monumental storm, bringing yet again a large amount of rain to our area. We prepare evacuation notices on January 3rd, open shelter at Cesar Chavez School in collaboration with PVUSD, and when those evacuation orders were executed by our police department, we received 73 residents overnight at this Cesar Chavez shelter. We want the council to know that we were very fortunate to count with the support of the Santa Cruz County Health Department, who provided on-site medical support for those that arrive at the shelter and were available overnight while the shelter remained open. Fast forward, I just want to emphasize that this is a weather event. It's dynamic, it's changing, and it's just like the weatherman. I think we all can relate to that, right? Like, there was a prediction, and Wednesday night we were ready. We had prepared our community, we had prepared our infrastructure, and we were prepared, as City Manager Mendez mentioned, with an open EOC, fully active, ready to respond, and it did not rain, and our streets did not flood, and we woke up to very, very good news the next day, and that was great. So because of that, we the next morning, lifted the evacuation orders, allowing people to repopulate and return home, because the imminent risk to their safety was now non-existent. So Thursday morning, everyone was notified they could return home. But that is not the end. We quickly began preparations for what National Weather Service again warned us that there was a new storm coming to our area, and that could cause some concerns on the waterways. And I'm going to let Jackie speak about water, because that's her expertise. But based on the weather reports, we yet again issue different orders for those residents that could potentially be impacted by this new event, particularly neighbors around the Corralitos and Salsipuede Creeks. And now a new area of concern emerged with this third storm, which was the Pajaro River. So we extended the area of those neighbors that needed to be notified, and this time, as predicted, a heavy amount of rain hit our area, and again causing the already compromised levee of the Corralitos Creek area to flood again in a very similar pattern. I was told earlier today, in the exact same pattern that flooded in the December 31st evening. So with that, that was just yesterday again, in the early hours of the morning, we made the decision to evacuate neighbors that we knew could be impacted, and we had our fire and police personnel just helping notify neighbors as quickly as possible to leave the area and evacuate. And these orders were in place again through this morning at 5 a.m. when we lifted the evacuation orders and downgraded them to an evacuation warning. And what's important for the public to understand is that an order is we know now flooding is about to occur, and we're asking residents to leave the area. A warning is not like we're out of the risk, you should be ready and prepared to leave the area as soon as you are notified. So those areas that were impacted by the December 31st flood and the yesterday's flood are under an evacuation warning, and everyone should know that at any moment they could be notified again that they will need to move the area. We expect a couple more series of storms to hit the area between now and the end of the week or through the weekend. So we are not out of this storm, for winter storm. So any preparedness measures that neighbors have put in place, highly encourage them to maintain those in place and continue to be prepared and vigilant. I want to take a pause and just really share with you where we are today. We are monitoring, and Jackie will speak more about that. Our public works has continued to do cleanup and repair of any damaged infrastructure after the storm. Our public works staff continues to receive customer service calls and responding to questions that are coming in. Our infrastructure, I want to assure the council and the community that our infrastructure remains operational and prepared for another wet weather situation. And again, like I mentioned earlier, flood damage disposal at waste and recycling is available free of cost to those residents in the affected areas. And I just want to make sure that that is clear. Those that have been affected by flood can use our services in the public disposal area. And we don't expect any interruptions of city services through the storm. But the most interesting part of where we stand today is by Jackie.
Mayor, council, members of the public, thank you for this opportunity to speak today. We did have historic rain, that's clear to everyone. I want to assure everyone that as flood control managers, much like the cities and counties that operate in a multi-jurisdictional fashion to make decisions, so do your flood control managers. So the Pajaro River, it is split between 4 counties. So we worked closely with PRIFMA, that's the Pajaro River Flood Management Agency, the executive director, Mark Stredley, who is unfortunately unable to attend because he's on the levee right now. We also worked with Monterey County Water Resource Agency, County of Monterey, and Santa Cruz County to make decisions for our community. We have been continuing to monitor river monitoring levels. So we look at stream gauges for that. That gives us a stage and a surface elevation of the water. That is not the only indicator of flooding for the city of Watsonville or any of the communities that are impacted. We use cubic feet per second. So that's looking at a flow rate. That is not isolated to these stream gauges. We also need to know what's happening through our partners at Valley Water because there are reservoirs and other streams and creeks flowing into the headwaters of the Pajaro River. What does that mean for us today? Where are we today? We have more storms coming in. That is a reality. We are in contact with National Weather Service. We are also monitoring the river predictions coming out of the River Forecasting Center. Those are updated every 3 hours. We take all of this data and we try to consolidate it to make good decisions and make recommendations to the EOC director, to our public safety, and that's fire and police. Right now, the river is on a receding limb of the hydrograph. That means the river is going down. That is what we expected during the storm event. We know Salsa Puedes is also going down. So all of our rivers and creeks are now getting more capacity. We're in right now for a dry period for the next day and a half. That is extremely good news for us in flood control. It allows the river to go out to the ocean and create that capacity. As Assistant City Manager Vides just told you, we are not out of the woods though. We have 2 more storm systems coming in. So we will continue to monitor. We are going to get an update on the repairs that the county is putting in place right now on the levee. They are actively doing it, so I don't have an update at this moment. But please know that we, on New Year's Eve, we were monitoring the gauges. We were in communication, and we were making the best decisions we could, knowing that we were having a high-intensity rain event coming at us very quickly and not knowing that we had breached outside of city limits at that time. Once we were made aware of that, our public works crew, parks, everyone in the city of Watsonville on the city team stepped into action. We came in at midnight and we did what we could to protect our community and residents. The anxiety and fear that each of our residents has, that council, that city manager's office has, we in flood control feel that, and we are doing the best we can to get early and often data out to you. That concludes what I have to report. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you so much.
Hold on. Gonna hold your questions a moment. I'm gonna thank you, Jackie. I often come with recommendations for the council, but I don't want to miss this opportunity with recommendations for our residents. I think it's important that knowing that we continue to be on experiencing storm events, it's important to remind you. First, we want to remind residents to stay off the levees. The levees have a lot of water right now, and there's a lot of people working in them, working to make sure their integrity, to make sure that they are safe. as well as monitoring. So there's vehicles driving up and down the levee, and what we can do to allow that work to happen in a way that is safe for you and for our employees is to please stay off the levee. So I can't emphasize that enough. I also think that, you know, just neighbors can really help by keeping like their property drainage systems clear of leaves and debris. Just really developing an evacuation plan in the event evacuations have been real. Like we've experienced it 3 times in a very short period of 10 days. So having an evacuation plan, knowing where you're going, who's picking you up is of the utmost importance. Just having a plan and preparing what are those emergency supplies you need to take with you in the case of evacuations. This is message that we put out every winter. This winter, we're living through it. It's super important that we have that ready. We want to encourage everyone that can just download the Watsonville Police app. It's a quick way to get notifications or sign up for the Code Red emergency response. As you know, we want to know information, so I want to encourage residents to connect to something, whatever is comfortable in terms of communications, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or putting information out, but it's also, that information is not good if no one takes the action of actually signing up to receive that information. So I really want to encourage and emphasize that, connect to something. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, reverse 911 system, notifications have been issued. You don't get the phone call if you don't register, so I encourage you to consider that. A recommendation for the council, as you can see, the devastation, it has, it's real. We've been managing these emergency for the past 10 days. And the recommendation is that the council considers ratifying the city manager's proclamation of this local emergency due to severe flooding event. And that concludes our presentation, and both Jackie and I remain available for any questions council may have.
Any questions? Councilmember Dutra.
Thank you. I first want to say thank you, Damata, for stepping up and being the EOC director, all the staff that helped out there. I was on the ground. I saw so many people working very hard to try to alleviate the situation we were in. So I want to say thank you also to the Presbyterian Church, who took in our unhoused people to help them as well. And like you said, I know we're not out of the woods yet. I know that I was just watching the news today. The next storm doesn't seem as bad, but they said the one after that is going to be a really big one again. So it just seems like we're going to be hit. We're going to have a really wet winter. And so that's why all this work on our levee is important, and all the people putting in all the hours to make sure that we upgrade the levee so that this doesn't happen in the future. This is what we've been working for, and I know they've been doing it for years and years and years. I know that in the 80s, when my grandma lived on Delta, and it flooded as well. So I remember this as a child, and now it's like happened again so many years later. So this may be cyclical if we don't address it, but we are. I wanted to, I have a few questions. One is going back to the original storm. I was told that one of the pumps was short-circuited. Was that a wrong statement, or did one of the pumps short-circuit?
So I want to clarify that our pumps work with electricity. They're connected to PG&E. When PG&E goes down, we have generators that are connected to each of our pumps in the pump stations that are triggered in the event that PG&E is not working. So our pumps were all working that day. There was during the New Year's event was all good. On the January event, we had power outage, and our generators kicked in, no problem. Again, all pumps were working. I was on the phone and I was on the field until 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Our collection supervisor assured me many times, Tamara, all pumps are working, are operating as expected. This is simply too much water. A river inside our city is basically the word he used to describe. So no pumps working would have moved, you know,
None
the
shut
amount of
down.
water. Not shut down.
Not for 5 seconds.
Not for us.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
They're meant to, if power goes down, generator kicks in, they get tested periodically, and they are all working. And then the next day we went and did preventive maintenance again, just to make sure, no failures, and everything is working.
Because there were a couple people spreading that information, and I think that that works against us because you guys were doing such a great job. You know, I know that we can't always predict how things are going to end up, but for the most part, I think that you really stepped up. So, and we have more to step up too. That's coming in the future. The water has really shown the damage to our streets. You really see how much damage through all of our streets. Is there going to be some sort of recovery that we're going to be able to address these? Because I feel like you're hitting landmines every single time you drive down a road. I mean, it's like Freedom Boulevard, but everywhere now. No
Yes,
offense, Freedom Boulevard.
we are, and part of dealing with the emergency situation is really doing the documentation and the assessment of the damages that occur after an emergency or an event like this. And our Public Works Assistant Director, Danielle Green, has been tasked to document some of that damage. We have our Public Works engineers doing an assessment of all our roads and evaluating their condition, and of course, as we are able to document the damages, we are also going to be developing a work plan and hopefully a funding as we declare an emergency. And if the state is able to declare an emergency, then hopefully resources will become available that allow quick recovery of our infrastructure. But it is a priority and is being worked on.
Thank you. I think that, just stay on that. I appreciate that. And then also, I had this question when I was out, when I was knocking on doors to a lot of this, to our adult village. Can you get flood insurance if your house is completely paid off? I feel like someone told me, is it really expensive? Is it more expensive, or does it?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So if your house is completely paid off, you can get flood insurance. Okay, that's good to know as well. Thank you. And then if someone can speak to the fairgrounds, I feel like if this does happen again, we want to make sure that our community members feel comfortable going to the shelters. So I don't know what happened or why they weren't as accommodating as Cesar Chavez. But if maybe someone could make a kind phone call.
A kind phone call.
Okay. And then I just want to finally touch on the climate change. We are definitely facing climate change. This is very clear. We see it across the world. I mean, they were, I think it was Pakistan had the biggest floods ever. And so and now we're faced with floods and fires and every year. So I think that, people should know that Watsonville has always been on the forefront of addressing climate change. We are implementing policies all the time that other cities look to us to piggyback on. I mean, we've gone, getting rid of our plastic, our straws, our everything, plastic bags, which seem to be coming back in a weird way. But we're and having new development be required to put things in their new buildings that will reduce our carbon footprint. So I think we're going to continue. I think you probably have a council that's pretty, progressive when it comes to climate change and addressing those issues. So we look forward to making sure that we continue to implement policies that will address it here locally. I just want to say, my heart is to all of you, the seniors. I know that many are don't have a lot of family or friends, and don't have a place to go. And when I was knocking on doors, one woman told me, she goes, "It's just me. I have no family. I don't know what to do." And she started crying, and that breaks my heart because we need to be there for you. And some of you have my cell phone number. Those that don't, share it. If you guys need anything, please reach out to me. I'm sure to anybody else. I know Mayor Montesino was out on the lines as well, making sure people were getting addressed, and we're here for you. That's what we're here to do. So, and then your representative in District 7 as well, Ari Parker. So, thank you.
Given those kind words. Councilmember Parker.
I know, it's hard, huh? I want to say so much. I was there that same night. My garage flooded. My house was an inch from getting water in it, and my whole neighborhood was that way. Councilman Clark, I put an SOS out to everybody that I could think of, and Councilman Clark and other friends showed up at midnight, and they started, you know, they were the first ones out into our neighborhood, and they went back, and they just did so much, and then they did stuff for other people that they didn't even know, you know, that I just said, hey, go help them. And it was that reminded me of 40 years ago. My parents have lived there a long time. And now I'm there with my mom, who will celebrate, I keep saying it, her 100th birthday in March. And it floods in our area. Last 20 years, it really hasn't. But that night, when it flooded in New Year's, was exactly like every other flood for us on Lake Spruce Circle. And I have some humor on it because that's what we called it for decades, because it would fill up. But then it kept coming, and it kept coming. And that was different. And then I knew that the water was coming from someplace different. It wasn't coming down just Bridge Street and runoff where Vista Montana used to be orchards and there were no pumps. It was coming like a river. And then I got really mad because I figured it wasn't our river. It was what the county was responsible for. And I started pointing fingers because it was my garage and my neighborhood and my district and my people. And it was distressing. And then I moved into a better place, which is let's all work together and get what we need and help people. But as Councilman Dutra said, there's so many people who have moved into our district in the last 10 to 12 to 15 years who have never experienced this, have no knowledge of it. They didn't have a plan of action. That is one, it's like the terrible things, you know. Good thing that will come out of the bad. We will all have plans of actions after this of what to do. But flood insurance is really important in our district until we get the Pajaro Valley Flood Management, you know, the JPA, until that project is done. And that'll be 8 to 10 years. Is that correct? 8 to 10 years.
I would like to say the area where the breach occurred is actually in 30% design with the Army Corps of Engineers currently. That's
Right.
why that area was prioritized. Full, complete construction of the project is 8 to 10 years.
That was actually my question.
Well,
So the area, and I kept explaining it to many of our residents, and because it was such an alien explanation, and we all expected it to come from the Pajaro River. Where did it breach? Where did it breach? And it just didn't compute that it was out by Atkinson and it was the Corliss Creek. So that the question was, that is the most vulnerable part of the entire system, is that not?
in our estimation, correct, because it's a shallow and we consider a flashier creek. There's not as much capacity as, say, the Pajaro River.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the JPA, that was the focus of the first design and the first improvements, right?
Correct, because we realized, much like you're saying, we needed to prioritize this part of the levee system so we wouldn't have what happened happen. Correct.
Right. And this section is in the hands right now of design of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Correct. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is in design right now with the executive director of the Pajaro River Flood Management.
And that didn't
Agency.
just happen this last couple of days.
No, this has been a 4-month effort to get into design. So this project is fully funded federally, state, and locally. We have 100% of the funding for this. And we started early, prioritizing the areas that needed to go first for design.
And that was a big other question. What have we been doing since '95? And there's a big answer to that, you know, in detail. But a short, big answer might be.
So the short, big answer is thanks to our federal, state, and local legislators, we have been pressuring the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to finish the design, the feasibility study for our area. Based on what we know locally, historically, you definitely have hit the nail on the head. We know these floods come. We know it's periodic. These levees were built in 1949. So these are old earthen embankment levees. So we pressured the, collectively, when I say we pressured, please understand that's the County of Santa Cruz, Monterey County Water Resource Agency, City of Watsonville, and Town of Pajaro. We pressured the Army Corps to finish that feasibility so we could finally move into pre-engineering and design phase. That's the phase we're in right now. Thanks to the leadership of Representative Panetta and our new Representative Lofgren, we have been very successful in the Army Corps signing off on important feasibility and moving us along, and we have funding for that phase currently. That's in a nutshell. It's actually a really long history, which we can go into in a separate study session.
Sure.
But hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, no, that was a short, big answer. So much appreciated because all that took time. And in fact, this particular JPA, this particular project that the JPA is now focused on, went across President Biden's desk and became one of the 5 most important. I'll let you.
Correct. Based on environmental justice concerns, this project was prioritized in the presidential budget. So this is one of the most federally recognized projects at this point in time, and that's thanks to Chair Friend as well, who sits on Zone 7.
And so, I do realize there's so many people in our district who just have never experienced flooding here because they've really never lived even maybe in Watsonville or certainly in a flood area or even in Pajaro. My family has roots in Pajaro, so my dad brought a snorkel truck from Fort Ord and saved my grandmother's piano, and he was acceptable for my mother to marry. So there's historical. My uncles were in high school at Watsonville High, and they sandbagged. But we're talking about a time when there was 15,000 people in the city of Watsonville. It was a much smaller community, and they came together. We're a much bigger community, but we had people from all over. And I wanted to ask Assistant Manager Tamaravides, how did you put together and how many people participated in the volunteer effort because that was one of the things we talked about. You got to get people out there. We don't do the internet like the rest of, everybody. They need to see people. They respect our police and our fire so much. They need to see people. How many people came out?
Councilwoman Parker, since 2020, we have learned a lot about collective response to emergencies. I think our community has seen a lot through COVID, our response to the fires and our neighbors at North County, and our community is always first to step up and come out and help. I think on the heels of all that learning, it was very. We're very fortunate that we have a network of community-based organizations and community leaders who are engaged and committed to step up and come out and help our community. With the food bank, community bridges, community action board, Pajaro Valley Prevention Student Assistance, all the CBOs leaders immediately called, reached out, Renee, Tamara, what can we do? We're here. They started calling their networks, and within minutes, quicker than we can print the 2,200 flyers that were distributed in one afternoon, we had the community room filled with 70-plus community members that wanted to help. We quickly proceeded to train them and went out. So, volunteers' efforts are great. We have been blessed to just really receive a lot of calls, and we're here to help. We're looking for. There's a lot to be done. A lot that we've did, and a lot to do in the future. So we will continue to partner and work collectively to make sure that the recovery and the outreach of our neighbors takes place. And that's why, this week we are already engaging in recovery and resource deployment for our neighbors. So and it's all thanks to that collective response with our community partners.
I just thought it was extraordinary. I thought it was, our staff was extraordinary in getting out and training. Our public workers were, utilities workers were out there. They came back from their vacations. They did everything that they were asked to do and more. So it was greatly appreciated. So I had a question too about, no, that's not a senior moment. That's just tired. I'll go back to that. But I want to also say thank you very much to our community, because we did help each other. Even if we stood next to each other and said, what the heck are we going to do? We helped each other in that moment to move forward. But we did feel very alone. I'm going to agree. We felt very alone for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, so, and for some more. But it can't be everywhere all at once, and access was cut off. But as much as we could, we could. And there were council members who could be there physically, council members who were working phones, who were checking in, who were helping out people, and from afar. But we were all involved in this, and we learned a lot from this, and we learned a lot more. But the biggest part is, and I'm going to say it again, and I don't mean to sound harsh or uncool, we live in a flood zone. Flood insurance is real. Flood insurance is going to be real until 8 to 10 years from now, when this project is over with and Congress approves a new map. And when they approve a new map, then the insurance companies look to that map to make their, who's in a flood zone, who's not, and what's going on with it. And at that point, when we become designated, we're protected, we no longer have to have flood insurance, then you can make your choices to keep it or not keep it, because Mother Nature or God, in this instance, it floods, and there's water right here. And it seems like our climate is still changing, and it's not going to get better when it comes to it. We can only protect it to a certain amount. But even then, we'll see how that works out. Okay, so Jackie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I appreciate you bringing up flood insurance. I would like to remind council as well as members of the public that the city does participate in the National Flood Insurance Program community rating system. So the city, through all our efforts, through maintenance of our channels, storm drains, and every department participates in, we get assessed by FEMA, and it offers insurance reduction rates to residents. You just need to contact the city to get our current class rating. So that is a service that the city provides, recognizing we are in a floodplain. We want to do what we can as public servants and as city people to help you.
Great, I'm going to follow through with that, because I've never done it, and I carry flood insurance. Pardon me? Yeah, you know what, if we could talk, and then we'll get it out, and then Michelle can also get it out. We'll make sure that's out to the public and it's sent out to you. And I'm sure that information can be provided also on Thursday. Yeah, great.
You can also
Thank
probably
you.
put it in the website. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember, oh my God.
Salcido.
Clark.
New. I first
Apologize.
Is this on? I don't know if the green. Yeah. I don't know if I.
The mask sometimes.
Okay. I first wanted to thank every single one of the residents that have come here today to speak with us. Our thoughts are with you, and my comments and eventual questions, hopefully I'll stay brief. Is it working? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. I first wanted to follow up on the comment about insurance. It's important to trust yet verify. So if you are getting information that is discouraging you from making claims, it's important to follow up on the accuracy of that information. So trust yet verify. If you're getting information, just make sure that it's accurate. It's important to have advocacy in these areas. If anyone has dealt with insurance in the past, it can be the seventh circle of hell, frankly. So let's make sure you're getting accurate information. There are many vulnerable members of our community. We want to make sure that this information is accurate. And we want to make sure that you have that advocacy. So if you get information that is dissuading you from filing a claim, it's very important that you follow up with the accuracy of that. I thank you all for coming here. Briefly, I wanted to thank my fellow city council members. I am limited and unable to participate in many of the ways I normally would at this moment in time, but my city council members really stood up and came to the community. Each and every one of you has done an amazing job going door to door, talking to your community members, trying to get those needs met, and I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for what you've done. I wanted to follow up with the directors for public safety, for our emergency command center, just outstanding work in the new age of what climate change is and what these realities are. So I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank your comments. Governor Gavin Newsom has come today to our community to survey the storm damage. I know he's not watching this meeting, but he has my thanks as well. Deep appreciation that he's taken the time to assess the damage to the community. The comments are two ways, right? We need to be reflective on what happened on December 31st. We need to know the precise nature of the movement of this water, which is a scientific inquiry, frankly. And that's where we are so lucky to have the experts in the fields that we do. Dr. Mark Strudley has a PhD in earth and ocean sciences. He can and has provided a very scientific explanation, and this is where we lean into our experts to say thank you for giving us this information, because there's a scientific answer about how this water moved on the 31st. It did so in an unpredictable way. Atmospheric rivers are by their nature very unpredictable, as we've heard multiple times, and it overwhelmed our system. It's also important to make sure that things are not damming in the way that they did on the 31st. And so all of those things are reflective. It is important to be precise in that reflection, and we'll be asking for that. But it's also important to be proactive into what happened after the 31st and the outstanding community response that we had from Community Bridges, from Community Action Board, from our directors, from our city managers. My deepest thanks. And my question, I understand this was a question, the question is important. But to get to my one question, which was when did you, for the Corralitos Creek, you mentioned in your presentation that there was a moment that that the system became aware that Corralitos Creek had become exceeding capacity or overrun. Are there, I know there's monitoring systems, but if you could just give us a little bit more about how that information, how that occurred, and how that notification happened prior to us getting a full response.
I'm going to pull it up.
Okay, thank you for your question. We're getting the map pulled up. So our current stream gauges, we got a lot of inquiries about where are the city stream gauges. They've been on the city website forever. They're down for maintenance right now. It's not ideal. So we relied on the same system that Dr. Strudley and his staff were using, which is Santa Cruz County One Rain. We're able to monitor the stage and flood monitoring on Corralitos Creek. As everyone keeps referencing, this was a historic rainfall in a short amount of time. The stream gauge itself actually alerted us, and then immediately we saw the breach. That amount of water coming into the city at the rate it was, we only had maybe 30 minutes before it hit Atkinson and came flushing through the farm fields. So we unfortunately did not have much notification. You can see here, this is a great representation of the One Rain site. This is the One Rain site actively. That when we have an alarm on the system or a notification, you'll see the gauge itself has changed color. When you click on that gauge, you're able to see what stage are we at? What is the surface level elevation? You can go into more detail that will show you what is my flood monitoring stage, what is the flood action stage. I want to put an asterisk next to this. This is based on hydrographs and hydrologic data. They need to be scientifically verified in the field by people who are experts in this field of study. So we didn't just look at these monitors and make a decision. We called the civil engineer in the field who was at the breach site to determine what just happened. So that happened in quick succession. As much as the residents were experiencing that quick incoming water, we were trying to figure out, where did it breach? How did this happen? I would recommend, if you're interested in learning about the stream gauges, the One Rain site is very, very good, and it's what we are relying on as the city assesses our current stream gauge capacity and switching over to the same system as the county so we can be consistent. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you
Okay,
very
yeah.
much.
Thank you. And anybody else have a question? Councilmember Orozco.
Not necessarily a question. I just want to echo some of the comments that have already been
Yeah.
said. I think as a community, collectively, with staff and the amount of volunteers that came out and supported each other, I think it's commendable. I was out there sanding bags and so forth, along with Councilmember Quiroz. And I know that everyone did their part in ensuring that we were able to respond in the most efficient and effective manner and provide our families and residents with what they needed as soon as we were able to. There is a couple of concerns that were brought up. I know that we were working closely with Metro in offering transportation from their homes to shelters and so forth. There were some concerns about just how safety concerns around how families could get to the fairgrounds if a large portion of that section was flooded and so forth. So I'm wondering if there's a discussion around possibly looking at other areas for shelters that may be more accessible in the case that we see a bigger storm later in the process. So that's question number one. The other concern that was brought up was in regards to our local hotels doubling the prices on their availability in rooms. So we had residents who were displaced who did decide to go that route, and they saw a tremendous increase in the rates. So I'm wondering that is, as a city, if we're able to address or control that from happening in the future. I thank you for those questions. When we look at shelters set up, initially, this event is an operational event, right? There's a lot to unpack in terms of like regular operations of our public works, regular duties. And then there's the emergency response system that is activated to respond to this emergency. As part of that emergency response center, that is a system that is activated to respond to the emergency, there's the care and shelter unit. That unit is typically led by Nate Galobaco in our Parks Department and his amazing team of nice people that was highlighted today. And what their responsibility is to set up shelters. Typically, after the shelters are set up, then the system is set up to work where either the county or the American Red Cross is kind of like the higher level partner that takes over the management of the shelter and care system. At the moment that the fairgrounds is identified as a site that would allow for volume, like once we knew, like, okay, well, like this is gonna be probably more people, particularly because this week we were not just concerned with Corralitos Creek and South Puedes, we were also concerned with the Pajaro River potential flooding. And that really increases the number of individuals that are affected. Just to give you a sense, like we evacuated over 15,000 residents on just yesterday. So it is a large amount of individuals, and we need capacity in our shelters. This fairgrounds was able to stand as a shelter immediately, and the system moves quickly to identify alternative sites. So at the time that, so I'm already getting information from the field real time. So we knew that people were going to be accessing the fairgrounds until the point that they could not longer do it. And the system was already established that we will have a backup triage center at Ramsey Park, and Nick had already personnel deployed to Ramsey Park to use that as a backup site. And then also, like parallel to all those actions, there were other sites that were being evaluated. What do we know today? If we have another event in the next few days, we need to have, yes, the fairground is an awesome resource. You can take animals because it's just, there's a lot of like value in the infrastructure that and the resource that the fairgrounds brings to the system, but we also need accessibility in the event of flooding. So that is definitely something that the county and Nick's team are all working really, really hard to identify sites. And so Cabrillo College, for example, in Aptos was also open as a shelter and available in the shelter and care system for our residents as well. So the fairground was one, but then there's also Cabrillo College, and that, so if we need to transport individuals, then that system was also in place. We didn't get there, we didn't need to use it, but the system was in place and working, and all those logistics were being taken, care of. And you had a second question, and after I've been talking for 10 minutes, I forgot what it was. Did I answer it? Hotels. Oh, hotels. Well, it really disheartens me to hear that. I had not heard that in advance. I do want to bring up that prior, like in the onset of this emergency, as we were preparing for not the December event, because that caught us by surprise, but as we were preparing an emergency response, one of our staff members called hotels, negotiated just reduce rates for those that have been displaced. And when individuals show up at our shelter that they say, I really would prefer to stay in a hotel, we had a handout available with those pre-negotiated discounted rates. So that's what the city was able to do in terms of being of service to our residents. What happened when individuals got to the hotel, I couldn't speak about that, but I want to say that it just breaks my heart if that really was the case. But I'm not sure. I have no data to speak to that. But we took action quickly to negotiate discounted rates, and those were made available to our residents if they ask.
Yeah, excuse me. Excuse me. One of the things, and I know what I communicated out to everybody, and there was a lot of people who wanted to go to a hotel, and that was one of the conversations I had early on with Tamara, and they were on it. And I'm really sad to hear that, but maybe that wasn't one of the 4 hotels that they discussed, because the 4 hotels that I had, because I actually called all of them for various neighborhood people who contacted me to see, which one they could get. And I know a huge amount of people from my neighborhood went to the Hampton Hilton, and they were given the $129, and they were taken care of unbelievably well. So and the Best Western also had it, and the Holiday Inn, and then the Motel 6. There's a wide range of hotel standards there, for people. And the $129 one was the most expensive one. The least amount was something like $80-something, $86, $87.
$81.99.
81, yeah. So I don't know if they contacted another one, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And I was really thrilled that staff had already gone out and had checked in with those and had made that available. People also asked, and so I'm going to throw it out there. People asked me a lot, can we get reimbursed for our hotel stuff? And I said, well, we did have shelters open, and I mentioned that to them. But, there's all sorts of things that are coming down the pike as we talk about what we're voting on this evening. And we don't know what we'll be able to help with, but ostensibly that would be a no, right? You choose to go to a hotel, that would be your own choice on that one. And if the information wasn't given to you, because you didn't go to a shelter or, you know, I put it up on, I think I put it up on one of the social media places. But, you know, once again, right, as Kirby shakes her head, not everybody's looking at those. And so they had it on a piece of paper. Yeah, but, you know, I'm just saying, we all know, and I was there those nights, and it was crazy, getting the information out for people for that. And we have to actually appreciate our hotels that participated, and make sure that, you know, that they get a paper too at each of their desks, so whoever's working the night shift also gets it, you know. So there's also things we need to learn on this one.
Thank you. No, at this point, we're having commission. Council member, why am I forgetting everybody's name today?
Quiroz Carter.
Quiroz Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be very, very brief. I want to thank everyone who helped with this. I know it's a really difficult time. We've heard a lot about climate change and how it's impacting us. Last year we saw the floods, or maybe it was, the fires, or we have things that are coming, so it's really important to be prepared in emergencies like this. I remember I was very little. I was 3 years old when the '89 earthquake happened, and I still remember that. I'm 36 years old, and it's like clear as day. So I know how devastating these types of things can be. It's important to be proactive, as Councilmember Salcido said. Again, I really want to thank staff for their quick response. I want to thank the volunteers. Last week, I was out filling sandbags, and that is hard work. It is very literally backbreaking work. I threw my back out. But we had a lot of great community partners and volunteers and people that are willing to help. And again, I've said this before, but I'll continue to say it. We're so lucky that we have a community that wants to help each other, and that's a really, really great thing. I have one quick question after all of those thank yous to everyone. I just have a question about, and this is maybe to Assistant City Manager Vides, RVs and vans, campers. Are there capacity out at the fairgrounds for people who have those types of vehicles?
I'm being told yes, there is.
Okay, wonderful, because, okay, great.
No hookups.
Okay, wonderful. There was someone who was almost stranded in my neighborhood last night with an RV, and I wasn't sure. It was 2 a.m., so I wasn't sure, but I can relay that information, so glad to hear that. And,
If I may, Councilwoman Quiroz Carter, it's important for community members, and I think it was brought up earlier. If you are in need, I think the shelters is a great place to arrive, because the shelters have a system of being able to triage and point you at resources. Going to a shelter doesn't necessarily mean you need to stay there, but going to a shelter means it's a place where you can be connected with the right resources that you need. So I want to encourage people to consider, to consider like, okay, that is a place where I can go and get information, where whatever is, there's a lot of needs and a lot of questions and anxiety that people may have. I mean, the shelter, it can also serve to triage individuals that have health issues or be connected. So I want to encourage people to consider that as a resource.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark, do you want to say anything?
If you're going to call me out on the carpet, I'm more of a doer than a talker. I just want to thank all the staff and everybody who helped all these people in need, in this unprecedented flood that we just did not expect at all. As Councilmember Parker stated, she put out the call. I was driving down Eastlake when the water started coming across the road. It completely caught us off guard. And so we went on down into Bay Village. Luckily, I, have four-wheel drive and a tall enough vehicle where I thought comfortable enough to start, helping people and sandbagging and whatnot. And then calls went out to everybody else, and, it was interesting. So I'm glad that, we've been able to learn from this, and city staff, Tamara especially, and Renee have been fantastic. And yeah, that's all I've got.
No, thank you. All the questions have already been answered, but I really do want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, council member. I saw everyone in action through, physically or emails or texts. Everybody was trying to take care of the community that was impacted. I went to visit Ari for a few minutes, and God, the devastation. Once you see it firsthand, it's and the people that are impacted that need help. But I saw, what community is. I saw a lot of heart. I saw people sandbagging, Jimmy Dutra taking, sandbags with community people everywhere. Everyone was in action. Everyone was, how can I help? I got a lot of calls because it didn't affect a lot of people in my district. Like, how can I help? What can I do? And trying to feel those questions and that heartwarming to have all that sense of community for people that saw the impacts and wanted to help. I saw people delivering samples that they didn't even know. That just said, "Hey, somebody asked me, the senior, I'm gonna take these. How do I get these sandbags? I don't live in this area, but I need the sandbags." So it was a great to see all of that and everyone working together. The EOC, I saw firsthand when the EOC got established, to see all the staff, getting ready, all their expertise to keep you safe. It caught us off surprise, but now we're very well versed what the impacts are, and we're trying to make our community safer because of it. We're trying to work with our partners. That's the other thing. Everyone stepped up. Fire, police, parks, airport, our conservation group doing all those sandbags. Our community partners. Everyone stepped up in the community. Like I see, out of all these days, you saw everyone working together towards the same goals to keep your community safe, to keep you safe. So please, if you're able to get, the flyers, the phone calls, the reverse 911 calls, please listen to them. If you need to evacuate, there's ample opportunities, shelter-wise. Go check out with friends. But just give a call, give a ring to any one of us. Would be willing to help. So just want to make those comments. Thank you. And with that, can I get a motion? So I'll make that motion by Councilman Dutra and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Quiroz Carter. With that, can I get it?
Mayor, the motion is to consider the item moved to close, to items removed from consent agenda, which is ratifying the city manager's proclamation of the existence of a local emergency. And the motion was by Councilmember Dutra, seconded by Mayor Pro Tempore Quiroz Carter. And I'll take roll. Clark?
Aye.
Dutra?
Aye.
Orozco?
Aye.
Parker?
Yes.
Quiroz Carter?
Aye.
Salcido?
Aye.
And Montesino.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. And before I end, our city manager wants to say a few words.
Yeah, just very briefly, a couple of things. We will be bringing a much fuller report in the future. So we just got to get past what we're doing now in the recovery. And number two, we will also be bringing back I'll work with the mayor to set up either a study session or work to really dive in with Jackie and her team on the climate action plan, because I think it's important to set aside some time for that. So thank you for bringing that to the request, because we were thinking of doing it, but it kind of just gives a little bit more urgency. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, number 5 is there any emergency items? We don't have any. So with that, number 6 is adjourned. So thank you very much for coming. Meeting adjourned.